going to be making 3 different flowers out of these aluminium soft drinks cans. Whatever project I do, I'll always go through it and tell you exactly how I do it and what I use, and if it works out or goes wrong, I just think it adds a little bit more to the channel. So I've taped down my die cutting set, and everything I use I'll put in the description below, and these were fairly cheap, just little flower cutting dies, and I've run it through my Big Shot a couple of times, and as you can see, they cut the actual can really well, and they don't leave it sharp, but I would be careful, don't rub it up and down your skin because it may cut you. I put it through several times to get the amount of petals I need. So then what I've started building is, I've started building them onto this wire. I bend them into the shape that I want, and I just use super glue to glue them on, and it really does glue the metal onto metal really well. I normally have the silver showing out so that when I curl or look into the flower, I see the colour of the can. But obviously you do it however you want. And these flowers can be really useful. I mean, you can cast them in resin like I have done before, or you can make bouquets out of them, or just add them to other projects. So they're really great for that type of thing. I'm not sure what sort of flower this is. It's just a generic flower shape made from petals and a can. Where the other two that I make a thistle and a rose. They are really quite identifiable as a particular flower. But if anybody knows what sort of flower this looks like anywhere around the world, please also let me know in the comments, because I'd be really interested to know. I just love the shape and I love the way it came together. So as you can see, I keep looking at it to see if it needs any more petals added to it, and I've decided that I'm going to bend down the outside petals and some of the other petals as well to give it a bit more of appeal and shape to it overall. And I have decided that I think it does need a few of the larger ones put around it, which is the great thing about doing this technique. I'm just using my round nose pliers here, which are, again, this whole set of jewellery pliers are so versatile and so useful. Again, I'll put the link into the description for you. I use them all the time when I'm making my resin jewellery. So I'm making the stem out of a tango can, and I'm just threading that up the wire. I will use a piece of super glue around the top once it's in position to ensure it's stuck into where I want it. I've cut some leaf shapes out again using a different die set, and these stick fabulously onto this stem using super glue, and as you can see, they are just sticking on there nicely. So now I'm going to make a thistle, and I'm actually making the thistle out of these cogs. Well, the bottom part of the thistle out of these cogs, because I think it gives a nice effect. Again, I've taped them down with blue tape, because I find that if you use the blue tape, it comes off ever so easy, but also it stops the dies moving around when you're using them inside the die cutter. And again, they push out really well. These are quite detailed, so I needed to use my little pick to pick them out. I've glued them all together, or I will be gluing them all together in a line. It just makes it easier for me to work with them and do the next part of what I need to do. And they're very robust once you've glued them together with the super glue. But I mean, you don't need to do that if you don't want to. I'm taking my round nose pliers again, and all I'm going to be doing now is twisting this round into really a ball of cogs, but it will have a nice lot of texture, and that's what I'm really looking for here. So there we go. I've got my ball now, and I fastened that together using a little bit of glue, and I'm taking a piece of wire here, which is just jewelry wire, and you can use any color that you want, really. It doesn't really matter what color you use. And I'm doing this because I want to fasten off the bottom of these cogs. So I thread it through and just twist it off. So again, I'm making the stem in the same way as I made the one for the previous flower, just out of a different can, poking it through and pushing it onto the base. And then I use the, I think they're kind of plasticky pliers to bend it out without marking it. I'm making the leaves, exactly same leaf shape that I cut out. I just want them to be jagged because it's a thistle, and thistles have jaggedy leaves on it, and I stick them on. Now, I've got a purple can. It took me a while to get a purple can, and I've just kind of cut down, not all the way through, as you can see, little bits here until I've got what I want for the top. I've wound it on itself and glued it together again, similar to what I do with all the petals and leaves. And once I've got that into a rough circle, quite a tight turn on there, and I hold this down and glue it together, I then glue it onto the top. And the great thing about the aluminium cans are that you can bend these about as much as you want to get them into the positions that you need to make what you're looking for. And again, this is the thistle, and they have fluffy purple tops. Quite a bit of super glue on this. Again, that super glue doesn't react with resin, so if you want to put it in resin, you're fine. And I'm just using my round nose pliers again here to refine the shape. Now I am going to be making a rose, so I started off with my little bud, and I cut these out of the same petals as I did the first flower with. But what I've done is I've rounded the ends off and then gone back and rounded those corners off, so they're more like the actual shape of a petal for a rose. And I did that with several different sizes. I wound them quite tightly onto the wire to start with, and there's the internal bit of the rose. And then I just go around and add the size of the leaves, checking where I want to have them before I glue them on. And it is exactly the same technique as the first flower. It's just you've done it slightly differently by having all the petals kind of finishing at the same height, which is important for a rose because the center of a rose is not sunk in. And I space these petals out a little bit more rather than having them so tightly enclosed into the final flower. So then I'll just look at this when it's finished. There we go. And then I'll pull back and roll over the leaves and do the stem and the final leaves a very similar way to the others. So here they are, now they're finished. And I love how they've come out. I'm not really sure what I'm going to use them for. I'm actually going to probably keep them in the little vase until I make a decision on what I'm going to do with them. But I just really like them. They were great fun to make. And they didn't take long. Probably all three of these took in total about an hour and 10 minutes to make, hour and 15 minutes to make. And it is just recycling, isn't it? Well, it's upcycling stuff that would normally possibly get chucked into the bin